Done.
Okay. So as we've been recording this podcast, I got a text from Borzello. He shares with me this tweet that our buddy Rob Doster sent. The Horizon League.
Mm-hmm.
You see what I don't think you probably been checking Twitter, but Doster, the Horizon League's official account blocked Rob Doster, our buddy. He said, this is utterly pathetic, but you know what's even more embarrassing? The Horizon League pre-blocked all national media and to try and avoid facing heat for this. Now, I am not blocked by the Horizon League as of us recording this podcast here, but what this ties to is just like the Colonial did with James Madison, just like the America East did with Stony Brook, now the Horizon League has banned UIC from all postseason competition for the remainder of the academic year. That goes for all winter sports, notably basketball for the purpose of this podcast, but also spring sports, because UIC is going to go to the Missouri Valley later this year. Obviously, this is complete BS. We have not addressed this topic, I don't think, at all. Maybe a little bit with James Madison earlier in the season when they beat Virginia, maybe. But first of all, you can't be blocking national media if you're the Horizon League. You deserve to get dragged even more than the America East was rightfully dragged less than 2 weeks ago for pulling this BS with Stony Brook. And this idea that if you're a conference and you want to have these kind of protocols in place to prevent schools from leaving your league to go somewhere else, I got news for you. There is conference realignment essentially almost every single year. I don't think most fans might realize this, but because not every year do we have power conference realignment. But at the lower levels in Division I, usually there's at least one school, multiple, that will be switching leagues. This happens every single year. You're not going to stop this from happening. And I talked to a couple of people that are high-ranking in college athletics in the past week and a half or so, Parrish, two of whom are conference commissioners who spoke on background about this. And they're saying, they told me if it was us and if I'm talking with my presidents, we're not having this. There's nothing that stops a conference from saying, all right, if you're going to do this, then we're going to financially punish you. If your conference tournament games can be played at home, you're not going to get those at home anymore. You're going to be taking all the financial benefits of being in our league. Those now entirely go to the league. And oh, by the way, if just for as an example, like if Stony Brook made the tournament out of the America East gets that money. It's not Stony Brook that gets the NCAA tournament units. It gets split up in the future among the leagues. So it's not like Stony Brook would be profiting off of this. Now, UIC is not a tournament level team. Stony Brook is actually good enough to be a top 3 team in the America East. But it's a joke, Parrish. The student athletes, the players, the people that, NCAA types want to wax poetic about their general well-being all too often, they're the ones that get entirely screwed out of this. They're not involved in the decision-making. UIC college players had no say over whether or not they go to the Missouri Valley or stay in the Horizon League. And now you've got a bunch of pissed-off adults acting like, petty exes and doing stuff that's, completely Bush League. So this came down officially on Wednesday. It had been reported earlier in the week by Matt Brown of Extra Points, and I had gotten word on it as well. I'm not surprised by it, but this should be changing going forward. You can do things that can punish an institution that's leaving your conference, but the idea that these seniors, Parrish, I'm talking men's basketball, field hockey, baseball, whatever, don't get to play in the postseason because a bunch of other adults made this decision. It's a joke, and the Horizon League, just like the Colonial, just like the America East, deserve rightful criticism for just thinking that is so outdated. I'm kind of shocked that it's still around.
Horizon League still follows me, by the way, on Twitter.
All right, good. Not blocked either. Okay, there we go.
They'll have the top 25 and 1 very, very soon. As you point out, Illinois Chicago is not going to the NCAA tournament anyway. So I guess if I were in that office, like trying to help them navigate this situation, I would say, just leave it alone. The team you're trying to punish, the school you're trying to punish, they're not going to the NCAA tournament in men's basketball. Nobody cares about any of the other stuff. Let's just leave it alone. Let it go. Because the alternative is to do what they're doing, and they'll get dragged by a few people. Most people won't even know. Like when I talked to my wife this afternoon, she's going to have no idea that the Horizon League has punished Illinois Chicago.
Ellie Parrish not locked in on the Horizon League right now?
She doesn't even know the Horizon League exists. Okay?
Same with my wife. 100% the same with my. Oh, no shot. Not even close. Yeah.
So if I were the Horizon League, I would have just left it alone, because you're creating this thing that's eliminating the possibility of something that is wildly unlikely to happen anyway. And I know the other sports are part of this, but nobody cares about the other sports. I don't mean that literally. Some people do care about some of the other sports. I guess all of the other sports. Like if your kid plays, maybe you care. But nobody's out there tweeting about some softball team's not going to be allowed to go to whatever. I don't think. If so, I apologize. That's not the point. The point is this. I just leave it alone because you're causing a stir for no great reason. And I know you and Seth Davis have gone back and forth in this in a group text because I was in the middle of it when I was trying to record radio one afternoon.
Seth was on one. I don't know.
And I was like, all right, guys, y'all got to calm down. I'm trying to.
No, I wasn't even trying to respond that much because I knew you were busy. I'm like, we can take this offline. And like, it wasn't like that back. But yeah, Seth's like going all in on why it's on the school. And I was just, but it's not just on the school. That's the whole point. Go ahead.
I'm trying to talk about Desmond Bain live on radio right now. You guys have got to calm down in the group text. And I understand his point that there are contracts. And please, because I clocked out of the group text at some point. So correct me if I'm wrong. I don't want to misrepresent Seth's point. But best I can remember, his point seemed to be there are contracts. You're running a league. You do what's in the best interest of your league. And if somebody wants to leave your league, then eliminating them from postseason possibilities to ensure that one of your current and forever members, although that word is not quite accurate, they're the only ones that have an opportunity to benefit from postseason opportunities. Is that more or less his position?
Yeah, basically. And he basically puts it more on, if you're going to get angry, be mad at the institution. They're the one that made the decision to leave. And, the conferences have the right to kind of put up these barriers and these punishments. The leagues are aware of these rules when they're in place. I get that. My point is it's 2022. And literally talking to people whose job it is to run conferences have told me, wish they'd say it officially on the record, but you know how these people can be sometimes. They said there's nothing stopping conferences from saying, if you're going to leave, here are the new ones. We are not going to stop college players from being eligible to compete in the postseason because it's highly unfair to a faction of your conference, people playing in these games that have no say on what's happening. So, is it the biggest deal in the world? No, but is it something worth getting pissed over? I kind of think it is because it's easy to say, oh, it's just the America East. It's just the Colonial. It's just the Horizon League. Who really cares? When in fact, it affects literally the lives of, hundreds and hundreds of people that invest a lot of their lives. And so, yeah, they're playing in Division I college basketball. This is a national college basketball podcast. Thought it deserved a little bit of chatter here at the end of this episode. Horizon League should do better. And by the way, I don't know if they're going to be successful, but I do know that UIC and Stony Brook, they're lawyering up to do whatever they can to try and get this reversed. I don't know if they can. I don't know, but there's going to be a little more saber rattling with all this because it's just I hate how this is done in the middle of a season and suddenly, the UIC athletes, even though they're not the best team, they look up and they're like, okay, so we're going to be done playing. Let me look at it real quick for just to be official on this, Parrish. UIC will not be eligible to play in the Horizon League tournament, which means it's not going to play in the NCAA tournament because it's not an at-large team, obviously. And that means that its season will officially end on February 26th. So in 17 days, they'll play Milwaukee at home. And then, the seniors on that team, they're just done. It doesn't sit well with me whatsoever. And the Horizon League deserves all the heat that's coming its way.
I guess where I would land on this is I understand Seth's point, which is you're running in this case, the Horizon League, and you run it. And there are contracts that allow you to do this. They're not violating anything. It is in the contract that they're allowed to do this. And so they're merely exercising their contractual rights and looking out for the schools and the athletic departments that are going to remain in the Horizon League. And if you're running a business, and that is what the Horizon League is, then what is so wrong about running a business in your best interest within your contractual rights? I get that. I totally get it. By the way, and as you point out, it punishes student athletes who have nothing to do with this. How different is that than a postseason ban? How different is that than what the NCAA just did to Oklahoma State?
Yep.
All right. Yep. It's kind of the same thing. Falls under the same umbrella.
Just as wrong in many ways, yes.
Or just as okay in many ways. Like NCAA says, we got to punish somebody, and you're the people there. So, I guess here's what I would say. I understand all of that. But where I would land on it, this is one of those where I could argue either side, I think fairly well. But I think where I would land on it is it's wrong. These student athletes, if you went to, because now I'll separate this from a postseason ban in Oklahoma State. If you enrolled at Oklahoma State, you knew when you did it that this was a possibility. Hey, you might be going to a place, they got an NCAA cloud hanging over their head. They could get hit with a postseason ban. You might not be able to play in the NCAA tournament. Like when Musa Cisse transferred to Oklahoma State, he and his people knew you might be walking into a situation that gets hit with a postseason ban. They decided to go anyway. They get hit. I agree with you. I don't think the punishment fit the crime, but you knew what was possible. There's not a player at Illinois Chicago who, when they enrolled at Illinois Chicago, knew that they might have their postseason aspirations ripped away mid-season because of an administration's decision to change leagues. And to punish those student athletes for what administrators decided to do in the best interest of their school, I think is just fundamentally wrong. And the punishment seems to be on some level a possible deterrent. Like, hey, if you don't want this to happen to you, then don't start bouncing around leagues. Yeah. But as well as I do, that ain't never going to stop anybody.
It's not going to stop, and this literally happens every year. Again,
right. Yeah.
This isn't a rare thing. College basketball, specifically 32 conferences on an almost annual, if not annual basis. At least one school is switching leagues every year, and we're going to have more this year. We'll have more next year, the year after. This isn't slowing that process.
Right. Not at all. And it shouldn't, because if you're running a university, you should not let a short-term issue deter you from what's in your long-term best interests. So it doesn't work as a deterrent at all. Illinois Chicago should have done what was best for Illinois Chicago, regardless of what it might mean to its current student athletes. I think everybody would agree with that. Or at least I think most people would agree with that. But it does stink that the current student athletes are being punished in a way that perhaps isn't meaningful to the men's basketball players, because they're probably, even if they were allowed to do everything everybody else is, they probably weren't getting there. But, and I don't follow every team at UIC, but there is a team. I'm assuming there's a team on that campus that does have real postseason aspirations, and they're not going to be able to see those through now. No fault of their own. And I do think that's fundamentally unfair. Again, I can argue both sides, but if I had to land on one side or the other, I'd land on the side of this is a pretty lousy thing to do, because it doesn't actually really accomplish all these things that you think it's accomplishing. It just seems mostly petty.